I would like to call to order the Monday, June 6th meeting of the City of Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Rademacher.
Here.
Alder DePula.
Here.
Alder Holmquist.
Here.
Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder Thomas.
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the May 16th meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. There are no appearances except for the proclamation that we know of. You haven't received
I haven't
anything
received
about
anything.
appearances, have you? Okay. So I have a proclamation recognizing Juneteenth. Whereas word about the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863 was delayed some 2.5 years to June 19th, 1865, in reaching authorities and African Americans in the South and Southwestern United States, and whereas for more than 150 years, Juneteenth continues to be the most recognized African American holiday observance and also is known as Emancipation Day and Freedom Day. And whereas Juneteenth celebrates the freedom and achievement of Black Americans while encouraging continuous self-development and respect for all cultures, and whereas it is important to continue a dialogue of the realization of what Juneteenth historically means to all Americans to promote racial healing, reconciliation, restoration, and justice. Now therefore I, Mary O'Connor, Mayor of Monona, Wisconsin, in collaboration with the Monona City Council, do hereby declare June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth in the City of Monona, signed in the City of Monona, Dane County, Wisconsin, this 6th day of June, 2022, Mary K. O'Connor, Mayor. And just heads up, the Chief and I are going to be, Chief Janie Austin and I will be meeting later this week to discuss some kind of an event on probably a week from Friday, the 17th, since Juneteenth actually falls on Sunday this year. So we'll get the word out about that once we have it figured out. We have no public hearing. There is no consent agenda. We have one item under unfinished business. Item 1A, consideration of Resolution 22-2-2550, amending the 2022 capital budget for library HVAC upgrades. This is put forth by Public Works Project Manager Bruin.
Yeah. Oh,
Is
I'll
there a
talk
motion?
about it.
Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mark?
so this project was approved back in February, February 22nd, I believe it was. 20. And so part of when we did approve this project to do the 5 units and return to the bid for Unit 1, we were told to table the budget amendment until we figure out how we're going to pay for it. So we're coming back now to show how we're going to pay for it. We're going to do a capital budget amendment to take it out of the public safety building cost right now, because right now that building, we're still working on some stuff. We probably won't get back here till probably July or August. Then we can start figure out what we're going to do with that. And that project was over 2 years, so we figured in 2023, when we do the capital budget, we'll put that, whatever the contract is, we'll put that in the 23 budget, so we'll know what the actual amount is.
Just for new council members, we had $400,000 in this year's capital budget to begin planning for the public safety
Yes.
building.
Correct.
And then we were planning on another $400 next year, and we're not going to be spending anywhere near that at this point this year, given how the feasibility study is going. So Brad, did you have anything to add?
No, not at this time.
This basically would making some changes in the controls in here, so maybe it won't be freezing in the winter. Right?
This is actually all the HVAC. This is
all the HVAC.
This is the upstairs, but the 5 units.
Okay, well, okay. Oh, that's, okay.
You're thinking of
It's later, we have another one,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, so any questions? I'm sorry. Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Thomas.
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye. Motion passes. Under new business, item 2A, consideration of Resolution 22-6-2568, approval to submit 2021 Compliance Maintenance Annual Report, CMAR review and recommendations put forth by the Public Works Director, and this is starred for immediate approval. Is there a motion to take it out of order?
Move to suspend the rules and take this item out of order.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. On the agenda tonight is the annual approval of the sanitary sewer report card. It comes to City Council because the DNR requires a resolution from City Council to submit it. And as usual, we have a grade point average of 4.0, which means our system is properly maintained and operated. But I would like to go through the report with you as we have new council members here experiencing this report for the first time. On page 17 at the bottom, which is the first page of the report, you'll see that we have $25,000 that we have set aside in the sanitary sewer budget. And Mark, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have that as like a deferred asset account.
Correct.
That's used to pay for major maintenance or major repairs to the lift stations. The DNR likes to see money set aside as an obligation to show that we have money to make any major repairs, and we do. Typically on an annual basis, we don't have many major repairs to make, but when we do, the expenses are allocated towards that $25,000, and it's reset every year when we approve the budget. On page 18, which is the second page of the report, it talks about our capital projects that we have looking into the future. Every year I update that based on the 5-year capital plan that City Council approves each October. The major work that we have coming up is replacing the lift station PLCs, continuing with our lining project, and we're also doing a study on our 4 lift stations that are the older stations. We want to convert those to submersibles. And if approved in 2025, we want to begin a phased approach to rebuilding and replacing those old lift stations. Page 19, which is the third page of the report, talks about electrical consumption that we have at the lift stations. And you can see the total that we used last year was 65,772 kilowatts. That is down. That's actually the lowest year since 2016. 2016 we used 50,759. Our top year was 2019, which was the year after we had the flooding from 2018. Our groundwater levels were high at that point, and we used 96,000 kilowatt hours to pump water. What I'm getting at is that if you recall on past capital budgets, I've been having line items in the sanitary sewer budget to address I&I. So that year we had 50 inches of precipitation, which then reflected in the pumpage the later half of 2018 into 2019. So the I&I, we don't want I&I because it's clear water. It gets into the system, and then it goes to the treatment plant.
Could you explain what I&I is?
I&I is either groundwater infiltration coming from groundwater pressure into the weak parts of the mains in our system, and it's also sump pump discharges into sanitary sewer, which are illegal connections. So we are actively approaching residents to disconnect the sump pump connections that we have into the system. And through the capital budget, we are going to address other I&I issues through lining. We did a lining project in December through February of this year. We have another project on the books for 22, and we're going to be seeking another project for 23. So we're slowly chipping away at it, but the kilowatt hours for 21 dropped, I think, because we were in a drought year last year. We only had 22 inches of precipitation, but any little bit helps. We also had a major project in 2020. City of Madison led the Rimrock Interceptor repair, which had significant I&I, which is 70% our cost as far as the cost for treatment charges. And that was just off Industrial Drive as the flow heads to the treatment plant. On page 22, we get into the maintenance of the system. The one I want to point out there is the sewer line televising. Our goal is to do 33% of the system every year. We televise the system to then determine what we need to do maintenance on. So we are pretty much sticking to our goal of sanitary sewer televising. On the very next page, page 23, midway down, you'll see number of complaints. We have 2. And for those complaints, they were caused by contractors. One of them bored through one of the sanitary sewer mains, and we had a fiber optic go through the main, which held up the flow of the sewer. It backed up into a neighboring home. That problem has been taken care of. And the other one, a contractor left a tracer wire in the main. They forgot to pull the wire out, which also held back flow. So 2 complaints, which we accept responsibility for, but it was the result of contractor work. Another point on that page is we have 39 miles of sanitary sewer pipe. You could look at that as a large number, but when you look at the size of city the size of Madison, they're probably approaching 1,000 miles of sewer main. So I believe that is it for the highlights, but the main component of this is that we have a 4.0 on our system, which is what we've had for the past several years. So there's really no other major changes that we need to make other than keep on doing what we're doing. So
That's great to know.
yeah. So
Thank
with
you.
that, I ask for your approval to submit the CMAR.
Any questions for Dan? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item under new business is consideration of Resolution 22-6-2573, accepting a final report from the Ad-Hoc Work Group on Diversity and Equity Issues, put forth by the mayor. Jason Chung, who chaired the Diversity Committee, is here to talk about, and who wrote much of the report, I think, is here to talk about the report, and I think you all should have received it in the packet. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I want to thank the Council on behalf of this ad hoc work group on diversity and equity issues for the opportunity to help provide some guidance, some steering for our community as it tries to address deeply embedded issues of racism that were really brought to the surface by the turbulent and fraught summer of 2020, including some instances, some potentially very dangerous instances right here in our community, especially the detention at gunpoint of Mr. Keontae Furge. So I want to thank you on behalf of work group members. Eventually, I will forgive the mayor for asking me to be chair of this committee, but that had its benefits too. It allowed me to put my beliefs to the test and try to make some explicit contributions to how our community can move forward. And it was the same for the rest of our work group too. I think there is no doubt that our work group was the most diverse deliberative body ever put together by the city of Monona, and it was a great honor and pleasure to serve on that. I think the members of the work group formed some relationships that were very rewarding and that we hope will last throughout the years. So again, thank you for that opportunity. In my remarks, I'm not going to give you a blow-by-blow account of the recommendations. I don't think there would be much point to that, but I do want to give you a flavor of our work. And I want to start with a reflection that we do cover in the report about what a sprawling and challenging, messy program of work this was for the work group. The issue of racial inequity is almost without boundaries, without limits to its reach. And for a work group of volunteers like ours that was really dependent on our own means for material, for research and analysis. It was a lot to handle. And 6 months and even 9 months after the council gave us a 3-month extension is not a lot of time. So it was quite a challenge to find our way to try to figure out how much we could bite off, how much we could handle, and how to present some ideas in a coherent and organized fashion so that they would take hold within city government and the community. I make a point of this because going forward there will be a lot of the same. We think through this report we provide a lot of great guidance. We are so much farther where we made a huge step beyond where we were last summer in terms of answering the question that was on a lot of people's minds: what do we do? But the breadth of the recommendations means that there is still a lot of planning and sorting out, prioritizing that needs to take place to implement the recommendations that you and the community find most important. And it's going to take a lot of stick-to-itiveness. There is no way there can be a paint-by-numbers approach or follow these specific steps to get to the end. We've got to start somewhere and dive in and dig in with persistence and humility, commit the resources necessary to do a good job, and really stick with it. There will be a lot of trial and error along the way. So none of us should fall prey to thinking that now we can just carry out a specific program and things are going to change in a jiffy. We feel that we as a community have some challenges that we need the community to face up to with respect to race relationships within Monona. But it's not a Monona-specific problem by any means. We understand that the legacy of racism is centuries old and affects all communities in our area, just like it does ours. But also that we, as a community in Monona, have a contribution we can make to the greater area, to Dane County and the greater southern Wisconsin area. We actually occupy a kind of a special place within the community of communities in this area because of our demographic situation. We took a look at some of the census data, which confirms a gut feeling that some of us had, that Monona is a particularly white community in this area. All of Dane County, just like most of the country, is getting more diverse. And even in this region, which remains predominantly white, the growth of the non-white population over the last decennial census period has been remarkable. Monona is not growing in diversity as rapidly as most other municipalities. I think in terms of incorporated municipalities in Dane County, only Mazomanie has a lower growth rate, diversity growth rate, than our city does. And we are actually closer in our diversity growth rate to rural Dane County than we are to the communities that we would consider our sister municipalities in the Madison area. Some of this is due to our geography, the nature of our not having open space that makes it easier for a wider variety of housing to be developed. But some of it is certainly under our control. And we feel, the work group feels, that there are real steps we can take to make ourselves a community which is truly inclusive, more diverse than it is now, and in which people of color can move into and feel a real sense that they truly belong and are not on the margins of the community. We have 3 core beliefs that we wanted to put out. We do put out in the report that kind of summarize these concerns of ours. First, that our city should make a specific effort to become more diverse. Now, people choose whether or not they want to move to our community, but corporate entities of all kinds across America can commit to becoming more diverse. We don't have the same kind of means as a corporation, as a business corporation does, but we can certainly make the same kind of commitment and take the steps that are available to a municipality to become more diverse. So that's number one. We need to become more diverse. Secondly, we need to ensure that we become inclusive. And our way of looking at inclusivity is to set our sights on enabling residents of color to speak for themselves, to have the organization and the inherent support of the community to stand up for themselves and speak to their own needs and help lead this community. So it's no longer, we should all be past the idea of being the benevolent sponsor for those on the margins. Our objective really has to be to enable people on those margins to come into the center and help lead our community. That takes a lot of development. The development has to come from those communities and has to come from leadership too. Thirdly, and this may be obvious, but this is really the test. For us to make changes, for the community of Monona to make changes, there needs to be active engagement both from city leadership, city staff, and the residents of this community. Things simply don't happen when we have, and more and more people are becoming awake to the fact that segregation and racism comes about because of specific, very intentional policies. And they won't be reversed without similar strength of an intention and policy commitment. So that third principle is that we need people to become engaged in the long run. Both people who have some leadership influence, officially and unofficially, and we regular folks in the community who believe there is a path to equity. We really need to take action. So our recommendations fall into three buckets. The first has to do with housing, and we also stress that transportation planning has to go hand in hand with housing. This really has to do with that first core belief that we need to become more diverse. The availability of housing that people find affordable, is a key to that. And there are some specific recommendations in here, but what they really amount to is, let's have our city make a more explicit commitment to housing affordability and the development of diverse housings. Let's just be more black and white about that being our goal. Given that the city itself has limited influence, we still can set a very clear goal and send that message out to the community, to developers alike. The second bucket has to do with city operations. There are a number of things in here that are meant to make the city's commitment to racial equity explicit in terms of its policies and practices. For example, embedding specific objectives about competency in cultural competency and competency in addressing situations of equity written into the hiring process. When we recruit and we evaluate and grade potential employees, let's demand that those competencies be there. Another one is having a toolkit, and there are many examples of toolkits that different cities are using across the country that act as a guide to step through policy decisions and planning decisions in a way that takes equity explicitly into account. So these are about methods to bring equity into our planning and decision making in very explicit means and not leave it up to fuzzy good intentions and enlightened attitudes, but just being really specific about how we address equity. And the third bucket has to do with grassroots activity rising out from residents in the community, because we believe that that is at least equally as important as what happens in the city. There's a lot of concern among residents of Monona about how truly inclusive our community is. And for actual change to happen, the leadership has to come from the community to an equal extent as it comes from city government. This is a little bit hard to put our finger on because there is no single center that we call on to do this or do that. But through our report, we do put out a call to the community to find ways to get organized. And it could be, for example, through a community-based commitment to diversifying and enriching the visual landscape of Monona, trying to bring more diverse kinds of public art around different neighborhoods in Monona. That could be spearheaded by a community-based foundation. We also make a call for communities of color to get organized. There is an example of something happening right now that has the support of Monona Grove School District, just a small group of people of color, just trying to bring people of color together and enjoy each other's company and develop some relationships that when you have such a low population of people of color, those folks tend to be kind of dispersed and not well connected. We don't have critical mass in this community of people of color. So that one example I mentioned is a key way where people of color can get themselves organized and develop the strength to have a voice, a stronger voice of their own. And that's really important. So those are the three buckets of recommendations that we put forward to the council. We do recommend that there be an implementation committee that's established, a mixture, not just a committee of residents like this ad hoc work group was, but a mixture of city leadership and staff and residents to really figure out what its priorities are and do some of the additional planning that's going to be needed to implement the recommendations specifically around housing policy and city operations. The last thing I want to address is that all of this work can be conceived of as building the social infrastructure that our city and community needs to maintain a commitment to equity and diversity. There is some research and writing about the notion of good institutions, that a community has to have good institutions to sustain this kind of work and not just leave it up to individual passion. One focus of the social infrastructure needs to be how to handle disagreement and conflict around these issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Because we know that's out there, we know that bringing these issues more to the surface through the work of this work group and ensuing deliberations will engender more disagreement. That can be a really healthy source of growth for the community if we know how to handle it, if we know how to synthesize different points of view and not leave festering under the surface these different disagreements and conflict, which is usually what happens. So part of building the social infrastructure is to develop the means for people to come together and discuss their different points of view and work things out. There are always places where people who have disagreements have some common vision of how Monona can go forward, and we need to find those. So we do have some recommendations in the report that specifically address that. So I'll leave it at that. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any, but again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to help, for this whole work group to help move Monona forward. We feel privileged to have had that opportunity, and we wish whoever takes this further the best of luck, and will be available to assist you as you go along.
Does anybody have any questions? Nancy?
Yeah, I just, Jason, first I want to thank you and thank the Ad-Hoc group for your work. As you know, we met initially because I had taken a few stabs at this along with some other people, and in recommending based on Josh Peterson's proposal that we establish a permanent group, and I just can only imagine how much work this was. So, all kidding aside about you forgiving the mayor, I really appreciate everything, and the rest of the committee put in as well. Second, in the very beginning of the report where you list the recommendations, there was a reference to city council appointments. So I'm going to go flip back up to the beginning, to the executive summary. It might just be a typo, but it says number 10 under housing and transportation. It says appoint a city council member to serve on both the transit and plan commissions, and we are on both transit and plan commissions. So I'm a little. Did you mean appoint someone from the ad hoc from a?
No, so you're saying there is a council member who is on both?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what we meant for that to be a deliberate practice. So
Okay.
it's great that there is.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the same person. I mean, there are alders on each committee.
Oh, we were talking about the same person.
Right now, there is the same person,
Yeah.
and there was last year as well.
Right.
Last 2 years. This is the
That's a
third year.
sustained
It's the
practice,
same.
that's what-
We've got at least
Okay.
one person on it.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity. It didn't make sense to me since that has been a practice. So thank you.
Anyone else? No, I think maybe people need a little time to absorb it, too. We'll be voting on this on accepting it at our next meeting, but I too, Jason, really appreciate. I know you've put many, many hours into this, as has the rest of the committee, as did former Administrator Gatto, who staffed the committee and really spent a lot of time. So yeah, I'm just when I saw the report, I was really impressed how extensive it is and how detailed it is,
Indeed.
and obviously a lot of thought went into it.
Who actually wrote the report?
Jason wrote a lot of it, and then Christy, who's on, did quite a bit of the graphics, right?
Very
I
impressive.
think, and
Thanks.
Catherine
Super impressive.
Also did some of it, didn't she? Catherine Orr, who was another committee member. And Karen Reese from BMI, I think, was involved somewhat too.
Yeah, a lot of synthesizing of many really good ideas of many different sorts from the work group members. I learned a lot just from being part of the process, and then through being one of the main authors of the report and just bringing that all together. I just really appreciated the input we got from all work group members.
Yeah, I think just all the footnoting and everything was amazing. Mark, did you want to say something? No. Okay. Anyone else? Well, thank you very much,
Thank you
Jason.
very much.
And I'll be in touch with you in the next day or two about the next steps and what you
Great. Okay.
found out. Thank you.
Mary, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is a little embarrassing. Has anyone brought their power cord with them for their laptop?
I have, but I'm using it.
Yeah.
Who's going to do the next one?
She does. That happened to me at CDA the other day.
Okay, the next item is consideration of resolution 22-6-2574, allocation of American Rescue Plan funds for library duct cleaning and HVAC controls, put forth by the library director. I think Mark's going to address this first.
Yeah, so there's, this is first read, there's two projects with this. We plan to use American Rescue money. One, as a first item on the agenda tonight, was the HVAC project. So we want to do the HVAC project. When they're doing that, they're done with that, they want to clean the ducts, make sure everything is balanced, and it helps with, the first, make sure everything pressurize it correctly. And the second item is for the controls here. The controls has been an issue since it's been built, I believe, so we're trying to get that fixed. And they do have the wrong number in here. I have 2,400, it should be 3,400, so we'll get that corrected for the next read with that. And Brad, I don't know if you have anything else to add?
Brad?
No, yeah, not really. I mean, that pretty much summarized it. The issues with the controls in the municipal room, I think everybody who's been on council and in that room for a while understand why that needs to be done. The duct cleaning upstairs in the library, there's one other part of that. It's the fact that once we get the duct cleaning done and this project is done this year, I'm knocking on wood, but we shouldn't have to touch the HVAC system in the upper level of the library for many years to come after this. So pretty much everything will be replaced and cleaned. And obviously that's the most heavily used part of the library. So it'll all be done at the end of 2022. So.
And then when you repair the lower level, you'll be cleaning the ducts down here, correct?
Well, I've talked about that with the engineers. The lower level is probably a complete redo, but just rip the entire system out and redo it. So that means basically there won't be any existing ductwork left that we're actually using.
And we're using some of the ARPA funds for this.
Correct.
Correct. Any questions?
Is it 100% funded by ARPA or?
We're planning on using 100% funded by ARPA.
Okay. And we're keeping a running total of?
Yes, I'll bring it up for next time. I don't have it offhand.
You have a separate
Yeah, that's separate fund altogether.
fund for that, right? Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
All right, the next item, D, convene in closed session under Wisconsin Statute Section 19.85, paren 1, paren E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. This is related to the San Damiano agreements with MSA Professional Services and the Friends of San Damiano, the San Damiano grant contract with the WDNR, and San Damiano deed restrictions with Dane County. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So move.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Holmquist. Aye. Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Thomas.
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Okay, we are in closed session. Jake, do you want to tell them to stop recording and open session? Next item on the agenda, item F, consideration of resolution 22-6-2575, approving an agreement with MSA Professional Services for San Damiano Master Planning Services, put forth by Attorney Cole. Jake, are you going to? And is MSA going to be doing a presentation or answer?
Yeah, just
okay.
so the steering committee, on behalf of former Administrator Gatto, issued an RFP for services for developing public input engagement for the San Damiano property. We received 7 submissions. The steering committee narrowed it down to 4. We conducted interviews with those 4 firms. At the end of the meeting and the interviews with the firms, there was a unanimous recommendation from the steering committee to award the RFP to MSA Professional Services. So tonight, Rain Gardner from MSA is here to do a quick presentation overview of what's included in the proposal and could answer any questions that this committee might have.
Thank you. And thank you for your patience, Rain.
No problem. So thank you for having me tonight. As Jake mentioned, I'm with MSA Professional Services. Our team was recommended the San Damiano project. We're really excited for. We are teamed with Quinn Evans Architects as well as a part of this project. We felt that bringing on their expertise in the architectural realm, especially in historic preservation, cultural landscapes, and their background really build a strong team for our proposal. And so with that, in your packets tonight, you have our proposal fully in your packets, and it kind of outlines our various steps. And there's a three-prong approach to the planning process that we're presenting here, which has been one process that we've used multiple times on other projects, such as the Vilas Park project, master plan in the city of Madison. And we felt that that was a very applicable process here to pull on some of the aspects utilized in that particular project to build upon the master plan for San Damiano. And so with that, we go through 3 phases within the project that kind of outline the steps that we do for the master plan. It's about a 1.5-year long process, starting here in summer, building out the foundation of the various projects and doing our site inventory and analysis, and really starting to pull in the public engagement as the visions and goals of the overall project itself and what the master plan might look like. Then come mid-fall, we'll be moving into developing various concepts for the site overall. That will include not only the landscape, but then the considerations to the house on the property. And we'll put those together and out to public comments. And then finally, we'll move into the master planning stage. We'll be kind of starting in spring of next year, and that'll fully take us almost to the end of next year to go through that process of vetting all the concepts into one master plan, developing the final report, pulling the cost estimate together, identifying potential funding opportunities, and finalizing that plan. And through those 3 steps, we have quite an intensive community engagement platform to roll out. We will really set those boundaries, and as well as the opportunities of what type of engagement processes we want to really identify. At the beginning of the project, we listed several opportunities of the types of meetings that we can do, but then the type of applications can be from anywhere online, hybrid meetings, community events, engaging children in the space, as well as having a very inclusive platform to really make sure that we reach all people within the community who want to participate and provide comments to the overall project. And then just lastly, like I mentioned with Quinn Evans on board, we'll be looking at the historic approach to the overall property, knowing it has a long history, as well as tying in the indigenous history of the property. We plan to have outreach to the Ho-Chunk Nation as part of the project. And we talk about several different things within the proposal. I'm trying to keep this short because I know you guys have still a long ways to go in the meeting tonight. But with that, we'll have those engagement pieces that can be engaging to the public, whether they want to interact with us or just provide comments. And we'll start to set up those various platforms and continue to use them throughout the process. And so one of those is our Gis Story Map, and that'll be like a public website where we'll be able to put the inventory information as well as the concepts, the visionary tools, and then the opportunity for people to link to that site to provide online survey comments as well. With that, I guess I would take any questions or comments that anybody might have.
Does anyone have any questions? Kathy?
I do have one. When you talked about reaching out to the community, are you talking Monona? Are you talking Madison? Are you talking Dane County? What is your primary focus on including all of the people that you...
Yeah, no, really good question, because obviously knowing that this particular property is not only going to be a draw for your community, but obviously the greater area. And so it's going to be important for us to be able to hopefully identify the responses and the information that we do get, whether they're residents or of the larger area. And then no matter what, I think based on the popularity and the spotlight that the property's had so far, that I'm pretty sure that we are going to gain a lot of traction from the general area, so outside of the city, because I know people are going to want to utilize the property. I think there's a lot of excitement built around it. So it'll be on us to help try and manage those expectations and bringing that information back to you as to who's providing comments and where they're coming from, whether they're your residents or outside area members and users. It's always a challenge when we have park and recreational type projects, because you get a lot of different stakeholders and users that want to obviously promote their interests as well. So we'll have, and we've been through this process before, trying to manage those expectations and share that information with you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? Okay, Jake, is there anything else you wanted to add? So this will come back in 2 weeks.
I do have a question, not for them, but that there were a number of people who applied, and I commend them because I think their presentation is thorough and good, but we have no idea what any of the others, why this was chosen over the others, and yet we're supposed to put our stamp of approval on them, not knowing why they were chosen. And I'm wondering if someone could tell us why they were chosen over the other candidates.
Well, Doug and Nancy were both on the committee as well. Doug, do you want to?
I can give you my sort of thoughts on that. I mean, one thing that really stood out about MSA was the community engagement piece, and they did the Milos Park Master Plan recently. So if you have a chance, go look at that. The website that was created for that project. And that was obviously the community engagement's a huge piece of this. And the other thing was, out of the 7 that we looked at initially and the 4 that we interviewed, they really had the best handle on evaluating the house. They sort of had a system, a process of kind of, to go through. And as she mentioned, it's not just the house, the historic aspect, but that was something that was, I think, key for us, is that they recognized the house is an important piece of this, and figuring out what to do with it is a big deal too. So.
Yeah, I would concur with both of those things, and also I'd just say a couple of other things. One is we did go through a very succinct scoring system with the 7 proposals. We had a whole weighted scoring system with 7 proposals to get down to the interview phase of 4 as a committee, and we also came to agreement as a committee of the questions we would ask for the interview phase of each of the 4 candidates. And then I would just add, in terms of the overall evaluation, the third thing I was going to say is that it's all online. They were all taped, or the meetings are taped, and so you can actually go and listen to what the presentations that each one of them gave. Thanks, community media and Zoom, and then the last thing I would say is a couple other things to what Doug said, which is that we know, in part because of the Hvac Project, but also because of other projects that MSA has done, that they also have, and I think Ray mentioned it in the beginning, they have a strong relationship with the Ojibwe Nation, and which was, I think, was important to some of us, and if not all of us, and they have, a good deal of familiarity with the project already, because they've been involved in helping us write grants to land and water conservation, and have worked with our Parks Department before on numerous other projects. So, although many of the people that sent RFPs had worked with the city before, so it was a combination of, I think, of all those things. The community engagement piece, the additional expertise they brought in to help with the community engagement piece.
You can see the breadth of the members of the firm who will be helping
Right.
on the project.
Right, yeah. And Violet was very similar. It's a bigger project, but it's very, I would, as Doug said, I would recommend you go listen to the video and the presentation. Very similar in that, they had a lot of different communities they needed to appease, the people that live across and around Violet, as well as the people that use Violet, as well as, Violet has mounds as well, of course, and has a historic structure in the shoe. Those of you that don't know, that's a historic structure. Right? So there were a lot of similarities in terms of the project.
But I agree, I would definitely urge you to watch the videos. And if you go out to the city's YouTube channel, just look for the San Damiano Steering Committee. Each of the interviews, what we did was we sent them each of the four firms, the 4 questions kind of covering the same areas, topic areas, and then they had to prepare a presentation. So they each lasted about 20 minutes.
It's good. I would, some of us on the council who are not involved with the steering committee feel somewhat at a disadvantage, so you have to indulge us when we ask for information, because this is a really big deal for the city.
Sure.
And we don't, we don't hear about it except when this stuff comes up. Actually, it would be nice to get a report from time to time about what's going on and what's new to keep us up to date. Because people will ask us in the community, and sometimes you feel really stupid when you say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we try to have something in most of the newsletters and
So
in the,
I know, but
Right.
but yeah.
so I appreciate it, because some of us feel.
Right, and the president of Friends, Andy, as you know, was coming about once a quarter. Andy or Wes were coming once a quarter to give it. So, and I think he's probably due again. And now that you mention it, Kathy, so absolutely. And
I mean,
feel free to call
and we
anytime.
all read the website, I'm sure, but it's not.
Right, and feel free to call anytime. Those of us that are, but I point well taken.
Right, and things have been just not a whole lot. The Friends have been doing a lot in terms of fundraising, but in terms of what the city's doing, we've kind of just been working through this process for the last 4 or 5 months. So, Brian?
Yeah, and some of this may have been covered earlier. I see it, and I think I know what one piece of what Alder Thomas might be saying is, if this were a street RFP, we would be reviewing a score sheet that would show here are the different bidders and here's why we made the decision we did. And I think that similar thing, even though it's a little bit more challenging when it's a proposal that gets narrowed down and then there's an interview process, but it might help us as we're reasoning through how did that decision kind of come to be, and that I think is what all the Thomas might make it.
So I would urge you to watch those interviews.
I think a summary in our packet is also helpful.
I don't know if we actually have the matrix.
Yeah, or you're saying like a summary just of like the total amounts of each of the proposals, like you would do for a regular street, because a regular street project, to your point, like Dan would show, or Jake would, or if we were doing a park or whatever, might show, we got 4 bids, this was the amount of the bids, and pretty much we took the low bid unless there was reason not to, is what that goes. And that's not the case here, because the city's not paying for it, and so we didn't feel constricted to take the lowest bid, although it was definitely.
We can share
Right.
all the proposals with you
But we can
also.
certainly share the proposals, or share the amounts of the proposals in a bid sheet like that for future. Is that what you're thinking?
I was using that as a comparison, that if it was a project that we were looking at a bid price as one of the variables, and I think what is being presented here is there are other variables rather than just cost,
Yeah.
which I completely understand and agree with. It's how are we helping just to understand what it is that was decided, and for all of us to go and watch the same video, all I'm asking for is a 1-page overview of
Right.
these were the
Right.
4, these were the different variables that
Right.
we looked at.
Yeah.
Here's what the recommendation was. That's
Sure.
That's
Jake, maybe you could put together something like that.
Sure.
In your spare time.
Teresa?
Mary, you said that there was, the videos to watch are on the community media channel?
They should be on the
Okay.
YouTube channel, yeah.
Thank you, okay.
If you look under San Damiano Steering
Got
Committee.
it. Okay.
And then we can also send you all the proposals if you like. We have them all in digital form, if you want the links to all of them.
No, I
too.
think,
I get you're saying one page, but if you want more in-depth
absolutely.
to look at them, we can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Next item, consideration of resolution 22-6-2576, approving an agreement with the Friends of San Damiano for reimbursement of master planning costs, also put forth by Attorney Cole. Are there any further questions about this? Bill, you have anything else to say?
No, nothing other than what was expressed in closed session, just for the purposes of anybody watching on the public channel. This is an agreement between the city and the Friends of San Damiano pursuant to an MOU they had previously entered, where the Friends would agree to reimburse the city for the costs incurred in the master planning pursuant to the MSA agreement that was discussed previously.
Questions, anyone? Okay, next item is H. And this is start for immediate approval. Consideration of resolution 22-6-2577, approving an outdoor recreation aids grant contract with Wisconsin DNR for San Damiano, put forth by Attorney Cole. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Bill, did you have anything else to add, or Jake?
No, I just, as discussed again for members of the public, this is an agreement between the city and the Wisconsin DNR, whereby the DNR would provide $249,999 to be used for the acquisition of 3/4 of 1 acre, a portion of the San Damiano site. In exchange, those funds would be used from the Knowles Nelson program of the state, and in exchange for that, the city would enter into the aid grant agreement that would limit its ability to develop that land for only recreation and conservation purposes.
Any questions? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Moore.
Aye.
Alder Wood.
Aye.
Alder Thomas.
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye.
Alder DePula.
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item I, consideration of resolution 22-6-2578, approving a declaration of deed restrictions with Dane County for San Damiano. Attorney Cole, anything further to say?
Just a brief description of this, Mayor. This is a deed restriction that would limit the use of the San Damiano site to recreation and conservation purposes. It is a condition in order to receive the $2 million appropriated by Dane County to assist the city in the purchase of that site.
Any questions? Okay. Next item, consideration of resolution 22-6-2579, amending the 2022 capital budget for San Damiano Master Planning Services, put forth by the interim administrator. Mark, did you want to address that?
Yeah, this is just a budget amendment we have to do. It relates to the MSC contract. So basically, the city will pay for it, but get reimbursed, but we must do a budget amendment to put it on our books. So it's just to show it as a capital budget expense.
Any questions? Okay, next item, consideration of resolution 22-6-2569, approval of revisions to the Monona Police K-9 policy 4.006, put forth by the Public Safety Committee. Chief Cheney Austin. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Jake.
Full council, as required, there are a handful of core policies that council determined necessitated approval before any changes or revisions. The K-9 policy is one of those such policies. For those of you who have been on council, this is the second time you're seeing a revision. Reason being, for new members of council, if you're not aware, the city, using ARPA funding, invested in a policy consultation firm and review firm, and invested a significant amount of money just for the police alone. I believe it was $85,000. And so this firm helps inform, guide, and actually provides sample policy for police departments, not only in the state but across the nation. This particular firm, Lexipol LLC, is partnered with our insurance provider, Civmic. Civmic supports the policies created by this firm, and it's also supported by agencies who are accredited with the state. We are not accredited for a variety of reasons, but there's a very in-depth and thorough process to be accredited, and policy review and affirmation by outsiders looking in to assure that the policy is sound is one of those core requirements to be accredited. And so I'm asking that council consider adopting the Lexipol policy with some inserts to make it very Monona for approval. So, here for any questions.
Any questions? Done?
We have a new K-9, is that right?
We do.
Okay. And does this dog have more capabilities than Maya?
So as not to disparage Maya, I will say different capabilities. This is a patrol dog. Maya was a single-purpose dog. Maya did not have the ability to apprehend. And so when you're thinking about putting a dog in dangerous situations that the dog may have to defend itself or its handler or one of us or one of you, that is what our current canine dog can do, and handler. And they've been certified through a variety of certifications, industry certifications from the state and others to do that work. The team has been out in the field since January, since they received that certification, and there have been a couple of high-profile cases in which your Monona Canine team has been successful in apprehensions of some very violent offenders, to include the suspect, one of the suspects who was involved in the horrific shooting outside of the public safety building. Those of you who recall that homicide that took place, it was our K-9 officer and team who, along with a couple other Monona officers, who responded to assist when the suspect was spotted, assisted Madison police and others in successfully identifying, locating, and apprehending that without a bite.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I just had one question. I know Officer Andrew Hoffman is the K-9 handler, right?
Yes.
K-9 officer. But at one point it refers to a K-9 supervisor. Is he also have that role, or is there a lieutenant or someone? Or?
Maya's former handler, Sergeant Knockreiner. Sergeant Knockreiner was also a handler in his role as supervisor. He no longer has a dog, but he, in his expertise in being our first ever K-9 handler, he's learned a lot over the years of working with Maya and going through a lot of trainings and certifications, and he's well versed, and he's also a supervisor. Lucky me,
Okay.
so that I can put him in that role. So he oversees the program.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, next item, consideration of Resolution 22-6-2570, approval of revisions to the Monona Police Personnel Complaints Policy 1010, also put forth by the Public Safety Committee. Chief?
Thank you. For the same purpose, Council, the same requirements. I'm required to bring this before you before any changes. I think one of the things that's more significant about this is that there are some good substance changes, in my belief, between our existing policy, hopefully our former policy, to what Lexipol recommends. First and foremost, it's important to make mention that the policy is completely renamed. It's called the Personnel Complaint not citizen complaint. So the complaint is against potentially Monona staff, police staff member. And it's great that we're getting away from that nomenclature because obviously we serve more than just United States citizens here. And it's important to recognize that. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, I think what the policy does very well, as all these Lexipol policies do, is it's really easy to read, and it's really a clear and concise step-by-step process into what's involved with making a complaint, what's required of staff when receiving complaints. There's little wiggle room with this policy. And as all these policies, and I'll be here for a few more in the months to come, but as all these policies do, you'll see what is itemized as best practice, what is indicated as a state statute or federal statute. It's noted on there where that policy is based from. And if you want any more details as to sort of what Lexipol has used or quoted, et cetera, I do have those excerpts from Lexipol that I can provide on request. I just didn't want to sort of overwhelm the system because there's a lot of words on my version of the piece of paper that I have from Lexipol.
Questions, anyone? How many policies do you estimate that Lexipol is working on for us? I mean, reviewing, and it's hundreds, isn't it?
Yes, it's hundreds. So I'm required to bring about 6 or 7 back to council. But I've already been working on those that are not required and have been with an internal group, and there's union association there because I want to sort of get they're the ones doing the work, so I want to get obviously their feedback as well. So we've already changed dozens of policies, and for those not familiar, currently as it stands, once we implement all of this, we'll have one policy manual. It'll be electronic. It'll be, you click one link, not 3 to get to it. If you're a member of the public, it's one book, not 3 books that are on my desk. It's a lot more user-friendly. The policies that we have are good now. They're just not, I think, well organized, and probably not within entirely best practice and review.
Brian.
And maybe I've missed it, on 10.10.3.1, it says that it was modified, but I don't see the modification in that section like the other ones.
Thank you for asking that question. So Lexipol uses a software not quite like Microsoft Word or a multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar corporation. And it's a technical glitch, according to the representative. I did ask that question because that was raised to me by one of your colleagues. We don't know, and nor did she. She described it as a technical glitch. It could be an instance in which a space was added somewhere and it didn't recognize where that space was added. It's not like quite as user-friendly as the edit feature and show edits as in Microsoft. But that is my explanation for that.
Sounds good to me.
Anyone else? Okay, then we have one more item for the chief. Consideration of Resolution 22-6-2571, amending the 2022 operating budget for the addition of part-time police officers, also put forth by the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. This is something that I'll just note will not involve a fiscal increase. We're moving funding from one line item and creating another to support a part-time police officer program. Part-time police officers are utilized throughout the country and in several agencies in Dane County to help support and supplement staffing, not to add necessarily increased authorized full-time staffing, but to supplement staffing. A great example and the best thing that I can think of to describe how beneficial part-time officers are when you have instances in which you have unexpected staffing shortages. You have, we have 2 officers today who are retirement eligible who can let me know tomorrow, bye-bye, right? And so we have 2 officer vacancies potentially that we'll have to address. And how we address that is that these officers are answerable to me and answerable to the Police and Fire Commission, and ultimately, we serve at the will of council. But when I order them to work, guess what? They're ordered to work as a condition of their employment. And oftentimes, I'm ordering them to work overtime assignments based on vacancies. Family leave vacancies, military leave vacancies, sick leave, COVID. There's been a lot of overtime worked by your officers in the past few years. Some of that comes from our staffing model, which I won't get into today, but a lot of it comes from unexpected vacancies. Training is another example. When we have mandatory training that is required for us to maintain our law enforcement certification, I have to get officers through that training. Some of that training involves a day or 2 days full of training, but we still require a minimal level of staffing on the streets to keep us safe and to do our job. So the part-time officers would help supplement that. I should say that the union, the association, this is part their idea, part my idea, but they are 100% in support of this idea. The demographic in the workforce is changing dramatically. Even when I started a couple decades ago, priorities are shifting. Priority now is time off is very precious. Time with family and some flexibility in that is a precious commodity, and I respect that. And then they're good, they're great. They don't want to be worked to death. And I have to worry about resiliency and health and wellness of our staff, and as do all of you. And the part-time officer comes in when the opportunity for overtime is passed up. When the union has their pick and their say, and there's nobody else that wants the overtime to work the traffic grant assignment, for example, or to help supplement the parade, for example, then we reach out to a cadre of PFC hired part-time officers who are eligible to work the assignment. Some of those might be recently retired Monona officers, right? What a great way to just roll them back in after they've taken their 6-month break or whatever required under the retirement rules. And then others might be from communities around us. So they're familiar with jail processing, they're familiar with how to write a probable cause affidavit in this county, et cetera. And those might be good assets we want to get. Now I can tell you that, and I'm almost done. I know it's been a late night, and I don't have a report on it, so lucky you. But I can tell you that there's not 200 people lining up to be a part-time officer in this community, right? But there are some, and I think that we'll be competitive in trying to recruit and encourage those few, a handful of qualified officers to compete, go through a background check, be screened and interviewed by the Police and Fire Commission, be selected, and be so lucky to work here, as I do, that they will help alleviate some of the pressure that I'm seeing with our workforce right now. We give out wellness days, and I tried my best to make sure that we take care of our officers, but they do work an awful lot of overtime, and a lot of it is not their choosing.
Yep.
Kathy?
Yeah, I'll say the same thing that I said to Finance and Personnel. This is truly a win-win situation, because it's something that the officers want, which is time off, and it is good for the budget, because instead of paying overtime, we're paying a fat rate, and we're not paying the state retirement and some of the fringe benefits. So it's good for the budget. So it's a good thing.
Nancy?
Yeah, so, there's an old phrase, if you don't use it, you lose it. So do these officers that would be working part-time, are they required, I know just like you have training requirements every year as full-time officers, do part-time officers have a certain number of hours a month they have to work, or have a certain amount of training they have to go to stay sharp, so that when they are called on, they're ready to go?
Yeah, my preference is that the answer is, well, stay sharp. They are required under law to remain certified as police officers, to go through the same credentialing training as I do, right? My preference would be, with respect to your point of staying sharp, is that they are familiar enough and have enough repetition with the types of calls that we go to. Because Monona, even though we're small, we go to some big city calls because we're surrounded by the second largest city in the state, right? And so somebody from, and this is not a knock, it's just different experience, somebody from Barneveld isn't going to have the same depth of experience as somebody who works in Sun Prairie or somebody even down the street at McFarland. Those are probably more viable candidates that we would look at because we can look at the sort of types of calls that they go to in comparison to what we do here. Now, with respect to your question of sort of making sure that they're sharp on their skills, ideally, the example I gave about a recent retiree from Monona probably isn't the best one. I don't know how many people are going to want to come back. I just want that option, especially for traffic enforcement. But because there are some that really enjoy that, and I think would be great. But the best scenario I can think for a part-time officer is somebody who is already full-time employed, say Sun Prairie or Middleton or another agency that allows them to do part-time work. Because their chief and their council has to allow that, right? And so we would then open up that opportunity for those officers. So their primary law enforcement agency would be responsible for their training, their certification to keep their 24 hours, which they would anyway as a full-time employee. For those who aren't in that boat, those recently retired Monona officers who say, hey, chief, I'll take you up on that Beltline overtime opportunity, we would bear the burden of keeping them certified. But I guarantee you the cost of that to keep them certified is minimal in comparison to the time and a half cost, sometimes 8, 12-hour long shifts that it would cost us to keep somebody, to put somebody full-time in their place.
They'd be treated like a new recruit, so they'd have a training officer. If you didn't like him, you could.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yes, we would. So it's very abbreviated. It's very case dependent. It would depend on what experience they bring. For example, I'm not going to put a recently retired Monona officer through a 5-week-long program, right? But a Sun Prairie officer will need to know our policy. Fortunately, Sun Prairie is on the same records management system as we are. We're part of this consortium, MPSIS consortium, that many of you are familiar with. So that component is easy. We can probably skip that part because they're filling in all the same blanks in Sun Prairie than they are here, but they won't know our intake procedure. They won't know our policy or procedure as it relates to, towing a vehicle, for example. That's the field training component that we'll have to implement. So it's really going to be case by case, but it's not nearly the 5-6 month long field training that our young officer Gonzalez is currently going through right now, in which she's in week 1.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Chief. Final item, N, consideration of resolution 22-6-2572, urging federal and state legislators to adopt gun control legislation put forth by me and Alders Rademacher and DePula after the Uvalde shooting. Alder Rademacher reached out to me about a potential resolution, and so working together, we put this together, and
I suspend the rules to take this out of order.
okay.
Second.
All in favor of suspending the rules, say aye.
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 I'd like to move approval with one, will there, this is a Robert's Rules of Order question. If I move approval, can verbiage be changed?
Sure.
You'll have to make a motion.
Okay.
So you
Well, you're looking to amend.
She wants to move approval and then amend. Can she?
Yeah,
Yeah, you're not precluded from amending if you do that.
yeah.
Okay.
So first of all, we should move approval and then make an amendment?
No,
Or should she make the amendment now?
no, there needs to be a resolution
Yeah.
on the table, so.
So I move to approve the resolution on the table.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hadford. Okay.
So the only thought
Move
I
to
had,
amend.
I move to amend the title of the resolution to, instead of the words gun control, perhaps gun responsibility legislation.
Is there-
Seeing as everyone on every side of every aisle can get behind the word responsibility, and nobody wants to be controlled, and words matter.
Is there a second?
I would second that.
Okay. All in favor, any further discussion about the amended amendment, proposed amendment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we're back to the original motion. Does anyone have any other questions or discussion?
Yes.
Patrick?
I would like to, I'd like to make an amendment as well.
Okay.
So I would move to amend, is that, or make a motion to amend?
Mhm.
Okay. So I move to amend Resolution 2262-517. And do I need to say what I'm amending right now?
Yes.
Yes.
So I would like to amend, I would like to add the, as a condition, raising the age of someone who's able to purchase a firearm to 21 years old.
Is there a second?
Can I ask a question?
Well, you have to second it first, then we'll have
I
discussion.
I'll second it.
Okay.
This also caught my attention, Patrick, because the news is moving on this. Every day there's something else going on, New York, California.
This weekend.
In this resolution, it's simply the first bullet point under now therefore be it resolved, simply says a ban on the sale of military-style assault weapons, whereas some states in the country are moving the age that a person can buy a military assault weapon. Is that what you're speaking of?
In general,
Okay.
and, you know,
Any gun, or?
I'm speaking in general for any
Any
firearm.
gun,
Yeah.
any firearm. Okay,
And you have
that's
to
a
be
little
25
different.
years old,
Okay,
so-
that's a little different.
So that's
Okay.
another bullet.
Yeah, adding another one.
Got it,
Mhm.
okay. Because the point that we have here is stronger than what some states are doing. Some states are raising the age for the purchase of assault weapons. We're just gonna say, let's ban it, which I'm good with.
So,
if I understand it right, then you would be urging a complete ban on all military-style assault weapons and bump stocks, and then all other firearms that aren't so banned, you'd raise the age to 21.
Yes.
so Aline, do you have that?
Yes.
Do we need a second?
They have it.
We have a second. Any discussion, Brian?
I'd just like to hear some reasoning regarding the age, additional age restriction from 18 to 21.
Sure. The additional reasoning is that, you know, you have to be 25 years old to rent a car because it's predicated on responsibility, right? That person that reaches that age and experience is a little bit more responsibility. It has a better sense of responsibility than someone that's younger. And I thought about this when it turned out that newly minted 18-year-old immediately went and purchased those firearms to shoot up that school. So, you know, I felt that,
We're saying 18-year-olds can't fight.
yeah. So that was the rationale behind raising the age to 21.
Anyone else? Alder Thomas?
So are we saying 18-year-olds can't buy deer rifles or 19-year-olds?
Well, we can clarify that, but I
I
don't know.
mean, it just seems,
Are we saying we can't buy them, or also, does that also mean they can't use them?
No, I mean, what we say here is just a recommendation anyway. No one's going to act on this. We know that. So the state doesn't care about it. At least people that make the decision don't really care about it anyway. So
But the amendment on the table is purchase.
purchase,
Not
yes,
just-
not use.
Doug?
I think I've heard they raising the age 18 to 21 for handguns, I think to avoid the whole hunting rifle issue.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter all that much to me because, like I said, we're making a statement and the state's not going to act on it anyway.
Well,
Unfortunately.
do we run a risk in knowingly putting forth a toothless resolution? Knowingly putting forth something that we might. I would support handguns,
yeah, I would too.
but not hunting rifles.
So is that an amendment to the amendment?
Yes, that's an amendment to the amendment.
Okay, so is someone,
Is there Does either
language.
consent, or do we need a motion to amend the amendment?
Yeah. So Patrick consenting?
I consent.
Thank you.
And would say that we would refer to, long guns as 18 plus, 21 years old for handguns.
For handguns.
Makes more sense.
Okay, so
Why is BC
Is anyone-
got a big grin on his face in the back of the room?
We haven't been there long.
Just saying.
anyone else have anything to say about the limit sale of handguns to people over 21 and over? Okay, all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then we are back to the resolution as a whole, as amended, yeah. So any other further discussion on the resolution as amended? Doug?
Just wanted to say, thank you for bringing this forward, because I think it is important occasionally to make symbolic statements, and just walking around town and sort of looking at different places and thinking, what used to be unthinkable isn't, and people, it's unfortunately very thinkable. And it's going to come home at some point. We're going to have one, if not in Monona, in Madison or Dane County, whether it's at a school or a grocery store or at church.
Park.
Nuts.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just echo that. I appreciate putting this together, and I think it is important for us to make a statement regardless of whether the state decides to act on it. It was hard enough after shooting referred to in this, but, there was 6 other shootings this weekend. And as Doug said, it's just...
Well, I think planning for the Memorial Day Parade kind of brought it home.
Right.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I appreciate the sentiments that have been raised here by Alderman Moore and Wood. I am concerned about this getting in the newspaper only to have some letter to the editor railing against it because it's toothless and it'll never go anywhere,
Or somebody getting pissed off and angry, which would be
right.
worse, yeah.
So we do need to make a statement, and I don't want it to be pie in the sky. I want it to be reasonable and responsible, and I think it is. So thank you.
Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Moving on to reports of committees, commissions, et cetera. First, we will have updates and discussion on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Anyone have anything to share?
I just would like to say something. Mr. Chung tonight spoke so eloquently, and there was the comment about citizen engagement, from the ground up, folks coming together to work on these gnarly topics. And I just want to put a reminder out there that the Monona ARC group is always looking for new members. ARC stands for Anti-Racist Circles. It also stands for Awareness, Relationship, and then Commitment, that final part of it, meaning let's do something about it, right? So go to the website, sign up. It's a great way for people who have always had privilege in their life to sort of think about that and what that means. So.
Anyone else? I know, not related to that, but similarly, the discussion sections for the libraries, anti-racism readings are, I think, starting this week. So, and there are still books available. At least there were last week, I know. So. Anyone have any updates or discussion on sustainability efforts?
No, except for I would say that there was a really good turnout for No Mo May.
That is true.
overall. I mean, I was, huh?
Looks like John June.
Yeah, it was, no, I was surprised when I got back. I wasn't surprised that my yard was, 20 inches high, but I was surprised that my next door neighbor took advantage of it. But we went through, what, 75 signs altogether?
It's nice.
And there were a lot of people that were doing it that were without signs, so it seemed to be well received, and there was a lot of chatter overall. And I think some people enjoyed not having to mow for a month.
The signs are what really tipped it, and I again thank Alderwood. Even though we've been talking about it for years and promoting it for years, we just never wanted to spend the money on the signs, because it was just so cost prohibitive, but we did it, and it was well worth it, so thank you for pushing us to do that. If you go to the city website, there's a follow-up to No Mow May. It's titled, I No Mowed in May, Now What? And it talks about how to maintain a healthy lawn all year long. So the pollinator focuses in the spring, but then there's just this idea of creating lawn that is not compact. The soil is more fluffy and it has a high tilt so that when the rain falls, it stays where it falls instead of running off and into our lakes. Or biodiversity, which captures more carbon and sequesters it and puts it into the ground, which makes that nice dark black soil that the farmers all love. So there's just so many reasons beyond pollinators to adopt some pretty really simple practices, and it's all on the city website.
Along with a reminder to when you mow, don't mow your grass clippings
Yeah,
onto
exactly.
the street.
Right.
Yeah. So, Mark?
One thing with sustainability, the sustainability staff member, Lisa, is done
Yeah.
July 15th. So
Yeah.
she has 2 meetings left.
Yeah.
So.
We have to figure out what's happening there. Okay, committee reports. Alder DePula.
Transportation hasn't met, and our next meeting is, what do we decide?
The week next Wednesday.
Week from
Next
Wednesday?
Next Wednesday.
Yeah.
So, nothing else to report.
Alder Holmquist.
We canceled the Public Works meeting this month due to a lack of agenda items and owls a plan for me.
What did we do plan last meeting now? Trying to think what our last planned meeting was. I would say, just going back to DEIB, I think pleased to know that in the last year, the Plan Commission has approved 2 developments with affordable housing in them. We haven't got any shovels in the ground, but I'm pleased that we're moving ahead. We moved ahead in that direction. And I know some of the other proposals that have come before Plan are now in front of the CDA. But other than that, I don't have anything else to report.
Alderwood.
The CDA did discuss the lending proposal and, yeah, thank you. And I think we made some progress. There's more discussion to be had.
Alder Thomas.
I don't have a committee report, but I want to commend Chief McMullen, who was named, won the Bob Bruning Award of Excellence for Dane County. Among his accomplishments, 60,000 hours of volunteer service at the Deer Grove EMS. And so thank you, Chief. We knew you were great, but now the rest of the world knows.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Alder.
Alder Rademacher.
We talked about public safety tonight with the amendments to the policies. And I do not have any committee reports to share with you tonight. Our meetings just happen to be falling at times that aren't lining up. So we're meeting this week, all of them.
Chief McMullen, did you have anything to share?
we'll see how this sounds this time. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to make it very brief.
Okay.
But first of all, thank you all, Thomas. I appreciate the acknowledgement. I just wanted to take a quick note to say thank you to all of the city staff who helped make the Monona Memorial Day Parade a success. I think everything turned out well. I've been talking with police and my folks who were there. It turned out really well this year, so wanted to say thank you to everybody to help work on that. The last thing that I have is retired Chief Van Etten passed away about a week and a half ago. For those that did not know, we will have a public visitation Thursday this week, so the 9th, from 11 to 1:30 at the Eastside Club. Everybody's welcome to come pay respects and say hi to the rest of the family.
Thank you. Attorney Cole, any news to share? Aline?
No report.
Mark?
I don't know if you're aware of building inspections hours had been running through Friday, and they will, as of this week, they're back to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Okay. I just had a couple of things. First of all, condolences to the department and his family for Chief Van Etten's recent sudden death. Very symbolic, I guess, that our own department responded to the incident, which was, I'm sure, tough on everyone. A couple of other things. Mark and I are starting on budget preparations already, so I think today or tomorrow you're sending out the instructions for the capital budgets. And the schedules, so we'll be starting on that process, which goes through December. So you'll be hearing from your staff about that, I'm sure. Let's see, I think again, a reminder, look for something about the Juneteenth event on the 17th. And today was the deadline for applications for the city administrator position. We received 14. I am appointing an administrator search committee of the Finance and Personnel Committee, which is always Thomas and Wood, along with David Renner from MESPA and Timon from Monona Bank, Jason Chung from the DEI committee, and Andrew Kitzler. And we will be meeting on the 21st, I think, to doing the initial evaluation of discussion of the applications we've received. So we will keep you posted. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.